Please.
All here for you.
Okay. Charlotte Martin and Olivia Van. Thank you. Supervisor Gable, Celebrity, Berg, Wambold, Skalitsky, and Elverman are excused. At this time, I'd like to stand for a moment of silence to recognize Supervisor Gable. Thank you very much. Moving on, we have citizen comments. Any citizens wishing to speak, please step up to the podium. You have 5 minutes. State your name and address for the record. Any citizens' comments? Citizens' comments? Any citizens' comments? Seeing none, citizens' comments are closed. Announcements of the chairman. I'd like to welcome Martin Lukalov from Finance Administration, Charlotte Martin from Judiciary and Law, and Olivia Valentine from the Finance Administration. I was asked to ask the board tonight if any of them would be willing to be appointed to the Kenosha County Human Services Committee and the Kenosha Racine Community Action Agency. If anyone wants information after the meeting, they can see me in regards to that. That's all I have. Supervisor reports we'll move on to. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
Thank you. The Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee met last week Wednesday, and a conditional use permit for M&W Properties, LLC, and Woodrow Edgell to allow an expansion of an existing construction contractor's warehouse in the B5 Wholesale Trade and Warehouse District in the town of Wheatland was approved. That was for Drywall Plus. That will not be on tonight's agenda because it just gets approved in committee, so I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Nudo, you have the floor.
Thank you. Our committee had our meeting tonight, and our guests were Representatives Tip McGuire and Todd Dunstad. The discussion was an update on the state budget, with some of the highlights were the general transportation increase of 10%. The nursing home increase will receive a 6.4% increase also. In addition to that, there were 36 additional assistant DA positions approved throughout the state, and Kenosha, we might be getting one of those. On the bad part, and actually most of our discussion was on the dark store loophole that was removed from the budget. However, now there is a new bill co-sponsored by many members from both sides in the Representative and the Senate, and which is being presented as a standalone legislation, which hopefully will be brought up for a vote in the near future.
Thank you, Supervisor Nudo. Seeing no other supervisor reports, moving on, County Clerk.
County Executive Appointments, Ken Urquhart to serve on the Kenosha County Traffic Safety Commission.
Refer to Public Works Committee.
Mary Kubicki to serve on the Kenosha County Housing Authority Board.
Refer to the Finance Administration Committee.
New business ordinance, first reading 2 required from Supervisor Rodriguez. An ordinance regarding amendment of MCKC Chapter 3.647 Public Records and Property. Finance, Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Wamble, yes. Gens, yes. Kubicki, yes. Resolution 21 from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution authorizing and providing for the issuance of not to exceed $16,620,000 general obligation promissory notes, providing for the notification and sale of said notes and other related details. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Kubicki, yes. O'Day, yes. Gens, yes. Wamble, yes.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose.
Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I would move the resolution.
Thank you. I have a motion by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Ron Frederick. Supervisor Rose.
Before you are two resolutions this evening. Both deal with the subject of financing the 2019 capital budget items. The difference between the 16 million plus notes and the $8 million bonds is the term. The resolution before you deals with the longer term 20-year repayment for certain capital items. If you look in the materials on your desk, you will see all of the various items in detail, the specifics and the specific costs. These have all been approved in our 2019 budget, and this is the financing mechanism to fund the purchase of those various items. Just to draw to your attention some of those items, which probably need a little more highlighting, would be $260,000 for the CABA High Impact Fund, which has been so effectively used over the years to give incentives to bring industries to Kenosha who have higher paying jobs. There is an original budget resolution that this board adopted, which allows the administration to bond for up to $500,000 for those purposes. Again, tonight's resolution is for $260,000 of that $500,000. There's also $1,565,000 to finalize and complete the ERP project, and additionally, this will close out the project based upon the initial resolution of the county board in 2016. The other specifics are listed there, which I again say we approved in our 2019 budget. The committee has reviewed this. Our economic advisors are here from Ehlers if there are any other specific questions. If not, I would urge your approval this evening. It requires a majority vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Kubicki, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be supporting this resolution, all but the Kemper Center and Anderson Art portions of this resolution, but otherwise I want the record to reflect I support all other aspects of this resolution tonight.
Thank you, Supervisor Kubicki. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
Yes, I have a question regarding the handout for the 16.62 from Ehlers. I don't know if Supervisor Rose has an answer or if he wants Ehlers to come up. Looking at page 8, the GO principal outstanding at year end, correct, it says that in 2019 year end, the GO is $136,130,000. Is that's what our outstanding principal will be at the end of this year?
Just to answer that, yes.
Okay, so in 2023, our outstanding principal will be $165,065,000?
Unless the board changes something.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, Supervisor Decker?
Nope.
Supervisor Rose, do you want Dawn to speak to any of that?
I don't know if she has anything to add.
Okay.
That would be perfectly proper.
Okay. Any other, go ahead. I guess she does have something to add.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second, please. Hold on 1 second, please. Go ahead, Dawn.
Just one point of clarification, the outstanding principal at the end of that period of time is projected with future financings for a 5-year capital plan, not just the issue that you're considering this evening. It's projections with doing borrowings over the next 4 years as well.
Okay, now that you answered that, your projections is that what is in our CIP 5-year out plan? You included those numbers in there?
That's correct, yes.
So if we were to overspend our CIP plan by, let's say, $10 million in 1 year, that would add $10 million to that?
If you increased your CIP plan from what it is now and borrowed an additional $10 million, then that would be reflected in those numbers.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Thank you, John.
Just might I add, Mr. Chairman, that's why I said unless the board changes it, you can change it downwards as well as upwards, but these are merely projections.
Yes.
We have control.
Thank you. I'm going to clear the board here. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor say, a roll call has been requested. Yes, you're in favor of the resolution. No, if you are not. Resolution passes. Sixteen to 1. County Clerk.
Resolution 22 from the Finance Administration Committee, a resolution authorizing and providing for the issuance of not to exceed $8,880,000 general obligation highway improvement bonds, provided for the notification and sale of sale bonds and other related items. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Kubicki, yes. O'Day, yes. Gentz, yes. Wamble, yes.
Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I would move the resolution.
Thank you. I have a motion by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Gantz. Supervisor Rose.
These are the bonds. That means that they are for 10 years or less. All of the items listed in the materials presented here by Ehlers were items which have been approved by this board in the 2019 budget. It focuses on highway items. The big items are Highway KR project, Highway S, Highway F, and plus $1,283,000 Highway S project previously approved in 2017, but not borrowed due to the fact that the project's uncertainty surrounding the area of the Kenosha Airport and possible expansion. So these are, as I say, budgeted items for highway projects we've approved in the past. The committee has reviewed it and supports its approval this evening, and we ask your support as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Any discussion in regards to this resolution? Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to bring us up to speed, Supervisor Rose, what does ERP stand for? What project is ERP?
We're going back to the other bond?
Well, it's actually in both handouts. It's in the 8 and it's also
Okay.
in the other one.
All right, maybe I'll defer to Ms. Gunderson on that.
But that's the one that's expired. We have no more.
Yes.
I think
If she could explain that a little more fully, I think, than I could.
we'll bring the budget director up.
Is this on? Yeah, the ERP system has to do with the county's financial system. ERP is Enterprise Resource Project, I believe.
And perhaps you can just explain what that does that we don't do in the past. What's new?
It updated the financial package that we use, not for payroll, everything except for payroll regarding the financial statements.
So it's an accounting type system is what you're saying.
Correct.
So my other question,
Paying
Mr.
bills.
Chairman, thank you, Varna,
Sure.
is I look at the column for the $8,880,000, and I look at also the 16,620, and I look at the first column as being almost identical with the amount of financing. And it starts out 14,000 or 14,255,000. You're reading vertically down 1,545,000. So I guess I'm a little bit confused. Are these rolled into one? Are they separate? Is one short-term and one long-term? I'm not clear on the entire thing.
Well, as I said, the first one, the 16 million, were for 20 years, and these are 10 years or less. Can you come to the mic,
Barr,
please?
come to the mic, please.
The notes are for 10 years and the bonds are for 20 years. So it's-
So that would be the difference that Supervisor Grady's.
So
Requesting
is your question
confirmation.
regarding the
Well, my
for the
question
costs?
is the exact same numbers show up, for example, in 2019, if you look at the initial one, which we just passed for 16 million, and this one, which we're passing or voting on for 8.8 million, in 2019, if you read vertically down the column, the expenditures are exactly the same, or the financing is exactly the same. So I'm just wondering, if they're different instruments, one short-term and long-term, why do they show up identically on two separate financing instruments?
There are two different types of financing instruments, and the costs, I don't know what page you're referring to, but those costs are
I
different.
think I can help you with that, is the attachments to both those documents are identical. They include both issues. So we're looking at all of the county's debt in one plan. We've attached copies of that plan to both schedules. So if you look at page 5 of that document, there's a column for the notes and a column for the bonds. Those numbers carry through to the other schedules, and it's all combined together in one document. So
Oh,
it's
I see what you're
identical.
saying. Okay.
Yeah, so the schedules are identical.
Okay, so really, the 8,880,000, that's a note or a bond?
The 8,880,000 is the bonds.
Okay.
They're the major street projects for
And
20
the
years.
other portion is the notes? I
Correct.
see, okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Seeing no other discussion on this resolution.
Roll call
has
requested.
been requested. Yes, if you are in favor of the resolution, no, if you are not. Resolution passes 16-1. County Clerk.
Resolution 23 from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution 2020 Kenosha County Budget Advisory Levy Objective. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, no. O'Day, yes. Wamble, yes. Gens, yes. Kubicki, yes.
Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
I would move the resolution.
Thank you. I have a motion by Supervisor Rose and a second by Vice Chair O'Day. Supervisor Rose.
Thank you. This is a resolution that has come before this board many times. It is a resolution which is advisory. We're telling the county administration that it is the judgment of this board that in considering the 2020 budget, that it not exceed the 2.5% that you see in the resolution. Some years it has been less than that. And this takes into account what the committee believes public policy ought to be. It certainly is not binding on the administration. They can come in with something less. Last year they came in with 1.9% increase. So it is one which is, as it says, an advisory levy objective. Now, just because it is advisory doesn't mean that it doesn't have influence. I think it does have influence. And if you compare what our budget increases have been over the years before the advisory levy objective, you will see that some years it was 6%, some years it was 8%, some years it was 7%. All of them are a lot larger than what the levy objective has been since we have been adopting this advisory levy objective. So I think it's been effective. I believe that it's kept the increases down. It certainly hasn't kept the increases a lot less than they were when we didn't have the levy objective. I understand people say, well, we don't need this, we'll just analyze the budget and make the cuts. This is a gold standard for the administration, a sense of this board, what we are willing to support in terms of what is, in our view, good public policy. And if you take a look at the materials with the resolution, you will see that in order to accomplish this, there will have to be certain very substantial cuts as there have been in the past. The 2.5 figure was one which the committee did support with the dissent of Supervisor Frederick, and I think he takes the position, and he can speak to that himself, that we don't need this type of resolution, that we can cut or increase, if that is your decision. at the time of the presentation of the budget. I think the committee disagrees with that proposition, but did support the 2.5%. We would urge that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Discussion, Supervisor Nudo.
Thank you. I'm going to vote against this resolution because, once again, as I stated 10 years before, I don't believe it's needed. When the budget comes in front of us, then we can take a look at it and decide whether we should cut it, add, or whatever. But as of right now, I'm going to vote against it.
Thank you. Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I agree with former Supervisor Joe Clark, who stated the board does have the fiduciary responsibility for setting guidance for the administration. In researching the equalized valuation increases in recent years, I see that the Kenosha County change in equalized valuation for 2017 was 5%, the change in 2018 was 7%, and I would not be surprised next month to see that the change for this year is 9%. The 7% change last year amounted to almost $1 billion. Therefore, I anticipate the equalized valuation change to amount to over $1 billion this year. So why do we need another 2.5% to the levy when our equalized valuation is increasing by $1 billion a year? As one of my constituents said to me, the levy has increased over 10% in the last 5 years. When are taxpayers going to start reaping the benefits of being in one of the fastest growing counties in the U.S.? Therefore, I move that the 2020 levy change be set to 0%. Thank you.
I have a first motion by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Rodriguez. We are going to clear the board and have discussion on this. So I'm clear, Supervisor Poole, you're making an amendment, correct, to bring the advisory resolution to 0, correct? Correct. Okay. And you seconded it, correct? Okay. Correct. So we are going to have discussion on that topic right now. Supervisor Decker.
And I'm asking these questions to see if we can get to the 0%. That's why. So in the potential decreases in levy, one of the line items is sales tax revenue that we're anticipating $500,000 less than last year budgeted. Can I get an explanation as to why that is less? I know that Supervisor Nudo had pushed to have last year's budget under 2%, and one of those ways he did it was by increasing the sales tax revenues.
Okay, so you're asking through the chair to the budget director?
Or the chair of the committee of
Well,
finance, whoever.
I think the
would like.
budget director would probably have a better idea. Barnett, can you approach the gallery podium, please?
The projection that we have here is actually increasing the sales tax revenue by $500,000. That amount reduces the amount needed for levy.
Gotcha, okay, I'm
That's-
sorry.
That's
Okay.
what we're currently running so far in 2019 at $500,000 more than budgeted in sales tax.
Okay, I read it wrong, I apologize. Okay, so that makes total sense. So this net projected potential increase to the levy, that 1 million reduces the 5.25 million.
Correct.
Now, okay, so the 500,000, where did we get for the tax revenue? Where did we get that increase?
Other unknown revenue, that's just an estimate.
No,
based on
the
revenue.
sales tax revenue, the 500,000.
That's-
Based on projections from the state or
That's
what's
ba-
coming in?
That's based on the fact that we're 500,000 over for this year.
Okay, have we gotten projections from the state on what we should be getting next year?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. That's all, Supervisor Decker?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I didn't support the resolution under 2.5% because I don't support any resolution. I think the county executive ought to come in with his budget. We ought to review it, and we ought to shoot it up or down or remove whatever we think or whatever our ideas are. So that's why I didn't support it. I'm not for a 0. I'm not for 2.5% or any percent. I'm for the county executive's budget as he presents it, and we review it. So I will be voting no on the 0.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. You have to keep in mind that this 2.5% doesn't take into account some numbers which are a bit unknown at this point. For example, the Sheriff's Department negotiations with deputies. Is that, where are we on that? If you compare Kenosha County Sheriff's deputies' salaries to some neighboring counties in northern Illinois and southeastern Wisconsin, you're going to find that there are many departments, police, sheriff, other law enforcement agencies, that their salaries are higher. And there are deputies leaving Kenosha County or considering leaving to go elsewhere. How that negotiations will come out, I don't know, but it may be some increases that we're not anticipating, but I can't speak to that. But the 2.5% doesn't speak to that either. In the past, we've had some surprising increases in the mental health budget, and that has gone up rather substantially in the past. Health insurance costs have gone up. Prescription drug costs have gone up. So these are things that we don't have a lot of control of when you're talking about health insurance costs or mental health costs for commitments, etc., or the negotiations right now with the Sheriff's Department are not completed. So that's an incomplete number. So this 2.5% doesn't take those things into account. So sure, you can set it wherever you like. You can set it at 0% or 1% or whatever it is that you want. But if somebody comes in with a Sheriff's Department increase larger than anticipated, that means that somebody else there's got to be some give somewhere else. We've put in this 2.5% number thinking that that's a conservative figure. We don't want to go back to the 6, 8, 9% days, but is really 0% realistic if you want to have a budget that is sort of a maintenance budget. Let's look at it that way. One that doesn't include a lot of new ideas, new programs. So those are factors taking into account. So again, if you want to go 1%, certainly can do it, or 0% or whatever, but it just makes the job a bit more difficult when, for example, a sheriff's budget comes in at a figure that you didn't anticipate. Sure, you can support that, but keep in mind in supporting that for good public policy reasons, now you're making it more difficult on some other budget. What budget is that is the question.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Ron Frederick.
I would like to thank Supervisor Rose for making an argument for me. We don't know what's coming. He's right about the deputies. He's right about sales tax may go up a little bit because the state added the mail order, sales tax for mail order, which we'll get some of that. But the thing is that I think the executive ought to present his budget, and then we should do what we have to do if we find things that we don't. The same argument, okay? So I said I'm going to vote no on the 0, and I'm going to vote no on the resolution as it's presented.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the idea of having the county board weigh in on an advisory specification or number is a wise one, whether you pick 0%, 2%, whatever. It is our fiscal responsibility to give the administration some type of directive on how we think the financials should be operated. As it pertains to the 0% increase, I appreciate Supervisor Poole's statement that we are going to have larger equalized values. $1 billion certainly is a lot of money. However, there's a couple things you have to consider. You have your existing infrastructure that you have to maintain, roads, highways, that type of thing. You have new ones that have to be constructed. And these things really are, it's a lot. It's a lot to get your mind around and to be able to maintain what you have and still be able to carry forward. As far as the levy dollars goes, Supervisor Rose makes a good point. When you think about the money that's expended from Kenosha County taxpayers in Kenosha County, what is the number one department? What is the number one expenditure? It's enforcement. Approximately, and again, I'm going to say the wrong number here, the vast lion's share of the budgeted money, the levy money, goes to enforcement. So if you have to have additional public safety, additional contracts come up and so forth, we have to be competitive, you probably will be looking at higher numbers coming across that we'll have to be able to come up with money for. So what do you do? Do you cut other departments? I don't know. I think 0 is a bit low. I think 2.5 is reasonable. But you can look into your own rationale, your own way of viewing things. But I think the principle of having an advisory is good, and I do think 2.5 is reasonable. So I will be supporting 2.5.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realize you have to cut somewhere, but if you think back over, say, the last 10 years, when have we ever asked any departments here to cut back 5%, over somewhere, 3% anywhere, or even 2%? I think this is a reasonable request. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kent, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think some of the cuts that Supervisor Poole just referred to are cuts that happen behind the scenes when we lay out a planning tool for administration, and they go to the various departments and then say, you have to cut, you have to cut, you have to cut before you even get here. So I know for a fact that department heads come in and ask for more in the budget than the executive puts in for them. I've talked to them about certain things, asked about whether they were going to be in the budget, and they weren't because we had to come in at a certain number. So up until about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I agreed with Supervisor Frederick. It just didn't make sense to have this big argument, so far before the budget was even put out. But then I looked at it as a planning tool, and I think it's advisory. The beauty of what we're doing tonight is it doesn't mean anything, okay? They could come in higher, they could come in lower. They have come in lower, I believe, the last 2 years, after I said that they came in right next to it, they being administration, prior to that. So I give administration credit for coming in over a half a point more than we asked last year. So with the other variables that are in play this year, I just think this is a comfortable number. If it comes in lower, that's great. It's not going to come in higher. And the beauty of what we're doing tonight is we all get to look at a budget and see what we can do at that point in time. So those are my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. At this point, I'm going to clear the board to see if there's any other discussion on the amendment to bring the advisory resolution back to 0. And as of right now, I see none. So right now, we are going to vote on the amendment from Supervisor Poole, seconded by Supervisor Rodriguez, to have the roll call has been requested to have the advisory resolution change from 2.5% to 0%. Yes, if you are in favor of the 0%, no, if you are not. It fails 4 to 12 to 4.
No, 4 to 13.
4 to 13? Okay. We're back on the initial resolution of 2.5%. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
I just have one question. I'm reading in this, debt service shall be included as part of the levy objective. Debt service is currently projected to increase $1,100,000 in 2020. That's an increase of debt service in 1 year. We're increasing debt service over $1 million. We really need to get our debt in line. To increase over $1 million in 1 year, that's just unsustainable. We really need to watch that and get our debt service in line and get a debt policy in place to reduce our debt. Like I said earlier, in 2000, projected right now, in 2023, our general principal outstanding debt will be $165 million. I believe when I got on the board in 2010, our debt service was under $60 million. I could be wrong, but that sticks in my head. So we have blown up our debt. We need to get that under control. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Rodriguez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've all heard several times tonight that the beauty of this resolution is that it's non-binding. I think we could save ourselves a lot of time every year by just not doing this resolution, and those who think this is a good idea, sending a letter to the county executive saying, you know what, hey, we, the following supervisors, think this is what you should aim to increase the levy by no more. Sincerely, love, whatever. But this is a waste of time every year. So, and I won't be supporting it this year either. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rodriguez. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
I think what Supervisor Rodriguez says is worth responding to. I don't think it's a waste of time if you want to maintain some sort of control over this budget, because if you compare the years when we had the resolution to the years that we did not, the resolution has been very effective in keeping the budget down around that 2% level. And when we didn't have the resolution, it increased 8%, and that was the standard. And the fact of the matter is that the board did not make the cuts. You can get control of bonding by just making cuts. The list is before you in the budget. You don't want 16 squads like we bought this year? Cut it down to 0. Cut it down to 8. Make the decision. At least have the guts or the integrity to make that motion. I don't want 16 squads this year. We want 0 squads this year. Or we're not going to buy a dump truck or whatever the project might be. It's in our hands, but I haven't seen the board over the years do that kind of cutting. We say substantiate to the administrators who are making the proposal. They can substantiate. This is their business. But it's our decision to make the policy. And the only effective way that I have seen this board over the years get control of the budget is by saying to the executive in this advisory resolution, it is the sense and decision of this board that we will support no more than X percent. This year it's 2.5%, and maybe it could be, you could reduce that, but keep in mind you've got some deputy negotiations going on, you've got some mental health problems in the community, among other things, and so we're at that 2% level. If the executive came in here without a resolution and said, well, because this year we have more mental health problems and we've got more deputy problem negotiations and contracts, so this year it's going to be 6%, would you support that? I don't think so. That's why you need to support the 2.5% in this advisory resolution tonight, because this speaks to the issue that those of us who want to see control over the budget, this speaks to that issue and supports and urges the administration to follow suit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
I would just like to point out that we have control of the budget. When the executive brings it in, from that point on, we have control of the budget. So we don't need this resolution to tell us what it is. Let us be the judge. Let him bring in what he thinks he needs, and let us be the judge whether we approve it or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can tell you that in historical perspective, this was drawn up by an accountant, Supervisor Joe Clark, not just for the county board, but from his experience working with private organizations, non-for-profits. I see it myself in my own business. You look at your revenue predictions, you look at your expenditures, and us as a county, we have two main things to look at. We have the levy dollars that come in, and we have bonding. Those are your two tools you can work with to be able to provide goods and services. In order to have some type of a plan going forward, you need to say, I don't want to expend more than this much money in a particular given year. That's exactly what this does. So whether you're in private business, whether you're in nonprofit, whether you're a community organization, governmental entity, you have to have a plan going forward. This is a plan. It's not a binding plan, but it's saying to the administration, look, we realize our resources are limited, don't exceed these, this is our desire. So you can say we'll come in on the 11th hour and say, well, we're going to cut these particular parts out of the budget, but that's not really as effective as being proactive and starting on the front side. That's what we're trying to do tonight. So I will support the 2.5% advisory referendum. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Seeing no more discussion on this item, we are going to vote on the resolution at hand. There's been a roll call requested. Vote yes if you're in favor of the resolution at 2.5%, no if you're not.
Passes 9-8.
Passes 9-8.
Resolution 24 from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee, a resolution annual report, a multi-jurisdictional plan for Kenosha County 2035-2018 annual report. Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee, public hearing on proposed Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee, 19600 75th Street, Suite 185-3, Bristol, Wisconsin. Sponsor, request approval of draft annual report, a multi-jurisdictional plan for Kenosha County 2035-2018 annual report. Decker, yes. Galitsky, yes. Poole, yes. Rodriguez, yes. Nordigan, yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Decker, you have the floor.
Move Resolution 24, please.
Thank you. I have a motion by Supervisor Decker and a second by Supervisor Poole. Supervisor Decker.
Thank you. The Multi-Jurisdictional Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, comprised of representatives from the City of Kenosha and all of the towns and villages in Kenosha County, reviewed the annual report details at their meeting of May 28, 2019, and forwarded a positive recommendation to the Kenosha County Planning and Development and Extension Education Committee. Subsequently, the Kenosha County PDEC Committee held a public hearing on the request on July 10, 2019, and recommends approval of the report to the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes.
Communications from Andy M. Bueller regarding future items scheduled before the Planning, Development, Extension Education Committee.
Receive and file and refer to the PDEC Committee.
Approval of the June 18th, 2019 minutes by Supervisor Uhas.
Supervisor Uhas, you have the floor.
Move the June 18th, 2019 minutes.
I have a motion by Supervisor Uhas, a second by Supervisor Rodriguez. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Real quick at this point, I want to just tell the board our thoughts and prayers go out to Supervisor Gable's family. There is a viewing 3 to 5 p.m. at Casa Capri, if you did not already know. And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. I have a motion by Supervisor Nudo, a second by Supervisor Rodriguez. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.